This is the E-commerce Brain Trust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our brain trust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Brain Trust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia, alongside my co-host Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations. And today we are back with another episode in our Category Disruptors Series, spotlighting female CEO founders behind some of the fastest growing and most innovative brands in their respective categories. Today, we're lucky enough to have Laurel Orley, co-founder and CEO of Daily Crunch Snacks.
There it is.
Very nice product placement.
Ready on the quick fire.
This sprouted almond snack that aims to tackle, to borrow your own words, the trusty but dusty nut snack category. So with that, welcome, Laurel. I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm a fan of your snacks. They're my 3 p.m. snack of choice. So excellent to have you here.
It's so exciting to be here. So thank you.
Well, great. Why don't we go ahead and dig right in? I've been really enjoying the conversations that we've had with other female CEO founders of brands. And so thrilled to hear your backstory and learn more about Daily Crunch as well. One of the things that I've really enjoyed is that in these conversations, it's clear none of the founders are like, we started with a focus group and did all these product tweaks and all of this. But instead, it's been more about a moment of inspiration and passion for their category. And so I'm guessing, I might have read too, the Daily Crunch has a similar story. Can you take us back to the early days and share what led you to create it?
So yeah, when you said focus group and the natural process, I kind of smirk because, I worked on Unilever for
I did so many focus groups, I imagine.
so much of it was based on process and all the different parts of pre-launch, to the launch, to post-launch, just so many facets. So I love consumer packaged goods. I worked on the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, Hellmann's, Suave. I was on Hasbro, Diageo. Brands are my bread and butter. But I moved to Nashville for my husband's work, and I was working remotely for Unilever before working remote was deemed acceptable. And it was hard. Everybody is in the New York office. They always forgot to, conference me in. I was like, hello, but I just kept on coming back to, I don't know. I wanted to take some time off after I had my third child, who's now 7. And I kept on going back to my Aunt Diane's sprouted nut snack. She learned the process of sprouting nuts and seeds in India over 20 years ago. She saw people there soaking them for brain health purposes. And she would just give them to friends and family over the years. And I just love them. I would go to Michigan where she's from and just she would give us a bag and we would just inhale them. They're lighter, airier, crunchier, the raw roasted nuts. We actually have a patent on it now. And I remember calling her like it was yesterday. I'm like, Diane, this may seem totally out in left field, but let's launch this for real. Let's make this a real product. There's a white space for it. There's an opportunity. This category is massive, yet it is trusty, but very dusty, and it needs some shaking up. Let's do it. And she's like, Laurel, I've been looking for a sign. Let's do it. And we launched during the pandemic.
Perfect timing. Perfect.
For the uninitiated, that for those of us that don't have an Aunt Diane, actually, my wife does have an aunt named Diane, so I feel like it's personally bonded to this journey. But what is the actual process of? She goes to India, she sees these sprouted nuts, she comes back, she starts making them herself. Can you break down? Is that? Do you soak them? What? How do I make a nut sprout?
Jordan, I can go so deep. Surface. If you want me to go all in on this, I will. So we have a special soak, sprout, dehydrate process. In India, where she saw it, people were just soaking them overnight and eating them while they were still wet.
Okay.
But she took it a step further with her dehydration process, where she then soaked them, and then when they soak in water for a duration of time, they swell in size, creating this hollow core, specifically the almonds.
Yeah.
And then they go into a dehydrator at a very low temperature under 150 degrees, but that hollow core remains intact, giving it that crunch like a chip. So it's a very different texture difference. And that's really what we lean into. The crunch is, just think of like a bare apple chip. They totally revolutionized a different way to eat apples by just slicing them and putting them in a dehydrator. And that's kind of what we're doing to nuts, where you taste it and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm getting that. That's satiating. It's not like this raw nut that's kind of chewy and dense and just, but it's not roasted. I mean, roasted is, we have a regulatory person on our team now, and she just found a bunch of findings about roasted nuts. Like it kills a lot of vitamins. Like when you're roasting something at like 450 degrees, you're losing a lot of those nutrients that are gone. So by, dehydrating or baking them, we're still be able to retain those nutrients.
Yeah. That was actually very fascinating and not too noise. Now that we know how these things are actually created, that's particularly helpful. The other thing that stands out, just watching all the products that you bring to market that feels unique to Daily Crunch, is just the sort of boldness of your actual flavors that you bring. And so, thinking of spiced chai pear and Nashville hot, clearly like a hometown favorite. There you go. And
Nashville hot's my favorite.
Yeah. And so I'm just wondering, like, where do you get your inspiration for these? Have you had misfires in the development process? I would love to learn a little bit more about the seasoning process and how you choose this.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this is now 5 years into launch. We're just starting to engage outside R&D because we're just like spread so thin.
Right.
But we have done this all in-house. Each one is one of our babies, these flavors. So like the cherry berry is actually an OG from Diane. So she was always making the cherry berry. So when we launched during the pandemic, we only launched with 3 SKUs, like a plain sprouted, and then Diane's cherry berry, and then a coffee, which we've unfortunately discontinued. But, like our Fly by Jing, that a collaboration, that is something that Dan on our team created, where we knew we wanted to use the mala spice and chili flakes from Fly by Jing, and we're just trying to find the right fit of how to create that. So we decided to actually use cashews only, and then edamame, and we added other spices to it and coconut sugar, and that just has a really great, but story behind it, being a collab with Fly by Jing. But even like the dill pickle and pepitas, we knew we wanted to do a pickle flavor, but we were really struggling of how we can make it different because all of our competitors have pickle.
Yeah.
So it was actually at Expo West, which is the largest natural products trade show in the US, that we were just talking to Cleveland Kitchen. They have a lot of fermented products, but they also have pickles. And they're like, yeah, we throw out tons and tons of pickle ends a year. We just throw them out because consumer doesn't want the pickle ends. And this is when upcycle just started becoming big, and a light bulb went off where we're like, oh my gosh, we need to get your pickle ends and we need to incorporate them into the pickle paste. And not only that, we have pickle chips that they send us that are just like pickle chips, like dehydrated pickle chips separate from the pickle paste. And one of the things that's also different with us is that like we don't want to use any artificial flavoring. We really try to, like, this has no oil in it, no sugar. So we really just need the taste to still be there, but removing it from a lot of what our competitors have of, roasted and just made with artificial stuff.
Oh my, I love that story about the pickle ends. And I mean, also because I'm a Clevelander, and so that's a nice collab with my town. So thank you for that. But it just carries through the natural flavors and everything as well.
Yeah.
One of the other common threads, when we've talked to other founders and CEOs, is a lot are in the space of the better for you snacks. But the goal here isn't just to find like a tastier version of what's already out there in the market. There's more to the story and the mission of the brand and the company itself. Can you share, and I looking at Daily Crunch and reading up on Daily Crunch, there is a lot about your mission as a company, as a brand throughout your website. Can you talk a little bit about your mission and why it's such an important part of building the brand?
Yeah, so we're a woman-owned certified brand, but we also give back to mental health awareness on college campuses, specifically the support network, which was stemmed out of the University of Michigan. So my Aunt Diane, her middle child struggled with bipolar, and you wouldn't know it by looking at him. He was just a phenomenal all-around kid, athlete. And when he was at the University of Michigan, he just like really struggled and he lost his life to it. And Diane and her remaining children and family started the support network and have really, in my beliefs, have saved lives, talking about it, breaking the stigma. Look, we're not like a mission brand like Tom's of Maine, where it is like the first thing you hear about with Daily Crunch. It's part of our journey and it's part of the thread of who we are. You know, we have talked a lot about our funnel with consumers, and it really starts with that crunch, the clean ingredients, the innovative flavors. But then when people start to learn more and more about us, that's when they really learn about who we are as founders. Where do we give money back to? You know, we talk about it, and it's part of the thread of who we are.
But also, like, I think this is what's so interesting about being in this sort of disruptor space where you as a founder can really decide like what this brand stands for versus just it being, you know, iterated to death via 100 focus groups. And it brings up a question that I wanted to understand, which is like, you have this storied career that you had with Unilever accounts when you were with Mindshare, and you have been in all of these, you know, large brands that you've worked with. And now you're in a pretty different space, right? Working with this sort of a challenger brand. And so I'm just wondering how much of that is like, oh, I take all the things I learned and I just scale it down by large percentages versus I have to approach this completely differently now that I'm sort of working against incumbents. How has that journey looked?
Yeah. So I have so my thing on this is I think it's so critical to have that corporate experience and background. So, you know, process, you know, the playbook, I mean, I have learned so much from Unilever, and so much of what I still do that has to go in this brand are key critical components from my Unilever days. Mm-hmm. I think without it, I would be lost.
Okay.
A prime example is, I mean, I laugh about this, but we have this incredible Vanderbilt intern who is with us this semester. And she flew out with us to Expo West, where she saw us firsthand win the Albertsons Launchpad Pitch Slam. And it was like just an incredible moment to be in a room with hundreds of people. 500 brands applied to this, and we got first place. And, you know, she was through it all. She has a job lined up at McKinsey, which is one of the most vetted consulting firms in the country. And when she was with us and saw that energy, she's like, Laurel, I don't know if I want to work at McKinsey. I think maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, hold the door. Like you need a few years under your belt doing consulting and just learning the process, learning how it is to work with teams, to manage people, to be managed, to just so many different pieces. And without that, I think that you don't have a strong enough compass, in my experience, for me. And there's other people who would disagree, but what I learned on Unilever has been invaluable, and I've used so much of it into Daily Crunch.
And would you say that it is that experience with Unilever, or are there other aspects that kind of contributed to overall strengths that helped get Daily Crunch off the ground? As you said, you launched in the midst of a pandemic. That's tricky from a timing perspective. So the ability to launch in the midst of a global pandemic, get it off the ground, and then have it be successful in continuing to grow 5 years later, would you say that the Unilever experience was like a key strength, or are there others that you would highlight as well?
So I was on Unilever for 13 years. So I just as much as it has helped me, it also cannot be more, being an entrepreneur cannot be more different than corporate. It cannot be more black and white. Like I thought like we're going to launch in March. We're going to be in all the Whole Foods by April. We're going to like, I had no idea that there's category reviews. I didn't even know what a pallet was. I literally knew nothing. I was like distributor because I was on like the marketing advertising side. So I was like, what's a distributor? What? I can't just sell into like Whole Foods. I have to go through UNFI. What's UNFI? Like there was such a massive learning curve. And I'm so grateful for these startup CPG, all of these resources and outlets where I can learn about it. There's books that in some ways it was like starting from the beginning because being an entrepreneur, all of a sudden everything's on you. When I was on Unilever, if we had a bad quarter, but it didn't affect my brand, like if Dove had a great quarter, Dove sales were up, but overall maybe the company was down. I didn't care. I didn't see how it affected me. Obviously, maybe there'd be cuts and other things, but I was like, I didn't see the full picture. And now all of a sudden that we're a super small team, that I am a founder and CEO, I see the full picture. I see it holistically. I see how all the pieces need to move together. Everything is so important that it works and syncs together. And when you're working at a company with thousands of people, you just are involved sometimes in just that one piece. And now I was like, oh my gosh, now I understand the full picture and the full piece.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You mentioned a lot of resources that were helpful making that transition from only seeing the sort of marketing side of the business to this, polymath where you have to understand every element of the business. One thing that I saw in reading up on Daily Crunch is that you were part of that SKU accelerator, and we've actually just spoke with them today. But they've launched Epic Revisions, Yente Foods, a lot of big brands that have now grown tremendously in the CPG space. I'm curious because in the sort of software and technology space, you see accelerators all the time. CPG, I think this is more rare in e-commerce generally, and so I'm just wondering, like, maybe talking a little bit about your experience there and like why we don't see more of these sort of CPG accelerators, like if that's something you'd expect to develop and to bridge that gap between, okay, maybe I know this part of the business, but now I need to know these 10 other parts of the business.
Yeah, well, I went through SKU. I went through the accelerator program out of Dallas in 2021. And it is like getting a mini MBA in consumer packaged goods.
Yeah.
So I think for me at the time, like I really needed someone to believe in us. I needed someone. We had zero awareness. We had zero doors. We were just like we were at zero, and I needed that conviction. We applied to them once before. We didn't make it. We applied again, and when we got into SKU, for me, it was like the next 12 weeks, I'm going to go all in. Like everything is going to be focused on utilizing what I'm learning. So that is what I did. You get like 10 mentors, incredible mentors from all different parts of the business, packaging, someone who like had a nut brand and knows all about almonds and where to source them from. We had an, incredible retail buyer at a massive chain. Was so many hats. And we are still very close with all of our mentors today. Like we still talk to them on a regular basis. They still have been a massive, incredible help. I think it's like really you deciding, where am I right now? Where do I want to go? And does this accelerator program fit that? I mean, there's also like the Target accelerator program. I've heard that I think Chobani has an accelerator program. There are a lot out there once you start looking, but you have to have the time to really invest in it or you're not going to get anything out of it. And I have to say, we came out a different brand when we left SKU. The brand we were going in versus going out was a very different brand.
Yeah.
To the point of needing to have the time to invest in it, how did you approach it from a team perspective? Was it you directly, just you from your brand on the brand side that participated in it, and then you fed it back to your broader team? How did you approach that to ensure that you're really maximizing the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, because we were still we still are small, but we were really small then, is, we didn't have a ton of other stuff going on like we do now.
So it could be the priority. There was some space for it to be the priority, but still you need to be intentional.
But I mean, look, my life is always busy. I have 3 kids. I have a needy dog, as you just met my dog. I have a needy husband. We
did not meet him. He did not come in for that.
But I think that, Dan, my co-founder, he and I led it. And when it came to like, all right, this week is going to be about, different marketing segments, our marketing person would come in. Okay, this is going to be about X. But we were like a much smaller team then. So it wasn't a lot of us. We've had about like 25 incredible interns out of Vanderbilt. And I think at the time we had 2 interns who were doing their MBA, and they were, just really helping, because there would be different projects where we'd have to like come up with our elevator pitch or what was our tagline and just really like change it and challenge us. So there was a lot of like work to take from SKU to bring back to the team for us to talk through about, okay, this is how we can get to our tagline as a brand, and, what resonates with us. And we're really talking about what are our brand pillars, like who is our target. But they cover off all topics like legal or raising money or, just everything.
Can you talk? I'm curious. One thing that we've talked about on this show, and I think there's a lot of discussion around the industry, is like finding the next generation of retail or e-com leaders, given that there's not really like a defined discipline of, nobody's going to school for like retail marketplaces or something like that, right? But you found this great pipeline of talent with Vanderbilt. Is this like you're looking for a generalist that's just excited about the company that you bring in? Like for others that are sort of starting their journey early on in this, like how do you attract talent at that level when maybe you can't go out and poach a C-suite person from another CPG brand?
Yeah, well, obviously the pandemic had some silver linings, and Kenzie, who is now our head of sales, she had an internship that summer lined up to work on Barbie at Mattel. Okay. Last minute, she's going in a second year MBA at Vanderbilt. They canceled it. Yeah. And she had no internship lined up, and she really couldn't leave Nashville because it was the summer of 2020. So that's when we posted something on the Vanderbilt, page, and she reached out to us. And I think she thought of this as like kind of like a summer thing. And she got so enraptured in it and she was such a critical member of the team that she approached us and she's like, Mattel has offered me a full-time job and I really want to stay here and work for you all. And we worked through what that looked like. I did find out later on that she had a boyfriend here who she actually got engaged to and is getting married to in May.
Yeah, there you go.
I feel like I am part of that, part of the connection, because she also needed another reason to stay here to be with her boyfriend.
Right. You didn't list that on your benefits package. Like, we'll deliver marriage by the end of internship.
But, initially, like, it wasn't like the Vanderbilt students were like, oh my gosh, let's work for Daily Crunch. Uh-huh. We got some incredible people, but maybe it was always like 2 or 3 people applying for the semester. And now I think since we have a lot more awareness, I'm like, all right, we can't take any more resumes. Like we're only taking one person, and we've had like 25 come in the semester, and we can't interview all these people. We just don't have the time. And I'm very grateful for that. I think just like we've done a great job also making ourselves, that we're a national brand and we're here in Nashville, and we want people to be proud of that. And I think getting into big retail doors, like being now nationwide in Whole Foods and in Target and all these other retails, and being on Good Morning America and this and that I think now we're noticed. But also Kenzie teaches at Vanderbilt in the MBA because she wrote a case study during the pandemic of how to launch a startup emerging brand during a pandemic. And it got published by Harvard Business School. And so she comes in maybe once a semester to teach at Vanderbilt and talk about that.
Some good recruitment.
I'd say so. I'd say maybe the next topic we have you on for is to talk about your interviewing strategies, how you
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Zooming out, because you mentioned, your Daily Crunch is very much in a different place now than it was in those early days where you have this large, national distribution and retail accounts and all that good stuff. I think one of the things too that when Julie and I have spoken with a lot of these founders is navigating the inherent volatility of, it's not a linear path from year 1 to year 5 as much as it is a stair step. And sometimes some of those stairs step down before they step back up. And so wondering what advice you'd have for folks that are earlier on in that journey where, they're growing, but you want to grow in a way that is sustainable, both from a team perspective, but also in a, supply chain and sourcing and an inventory perspective. Are there things that you feel like you learned that were hard lessons along the way as you got to this, whatever, many years down the road? Yeah.
Honestly, and I'm still dealing with so many, Jordan. I think though, as we continue on, I get more confidence in what I'm doing. But I was so focused on the marketing aspect of launching that I didn't focus as much on the financial piece of just making sure that we did our price pack architecture. And that's actually something we're doing right now. But what is the pricing? Are our margins where they need to be for? So I feel like we kind of realized, we shouldn't be launching with a 5 ounce. So then we had to backpedal and go to a 4 ounce. And that was just exhausting.
Yeah.
It was exhausting. I was all of our competitors are 3.5 ounces. We're 5 ounce. People mostly just look at price, and I wish that I knew to do more modeling behind that of what margins do you have to get to as a snack and how do we get there? But also, the R&D that things don't scale in a kitchen when all of a sudden you're doing a couple thousand pounds in a co-packer. So I initially didn't push hard enough that we were there for the first run with our co-packer because it was the pandemic. And I remember getting the first pallet from them and I was so excited and I tried it. I was like, oh my God, this doesn't taste like it. It tastes like a raw, nothing happened. No. And that's when I was like, nope, I'm going up there at whether you like it or not. This is our product. And I sat through the process and being able to see everything that went wrong. And I was able to address it and we were able to change the process with how we made the product. But I always say it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not for everybody. I also think that there's a lot of FOMO out there. You see all those unicorn brands being like, oh, we're so amazing. Look what we're doing. And you cannot, you have to stay in your own lane. It is so easy to look at someone else and be like, oh my gosh, how did they get $1 million in 5 minutes? Why am I not doing that? What's wrong with me? But some of these brands, not all of them, they just went belly up. Oh, they couldn't raise their money. Oh, they ran out of cash. Oh, it's not everything you see on LinkedIn. And right. That we just have to stay on our path. And what I'm noticing is the more I do that, I think more naturally the right people and investors organically find us or we find them, and it feels more real. And I think the more honest of hey, this is who we are. We're not going to, be a unicorn brand next year. We're taking it slow and low. We're trying to reduce our burn as we increase our sales and just be in our own modeling page of how we model everything.
I love that. I love the awareness. And also it sounds like from, as you talked about your experience with SKU and then tapping into the resource of Vanderbilt being nearby, there's a clear thread in your story too of tapping into resources, of continually learning. So there's some great nuggets in here for sure. To the extent that you're comfortable or able to share, are there any exciting things that you have in the works for Daily Crunch in 2025?
Yeah, obviously our newest flavor is a collaboration with Fly by Jing, so our sweet and spicy Szechuan. So that is our newest 2025 flavor. It is in Whole Foods and it is about to get into Fresh Time. I'm forgetting a bunch of other Wegmans. It's now in Wegmans. And Fly by Jing has been my crush brand for years. Yeah. So when Jing was like, yeah, let's do some R&D, I just geeked out. And it's been such an incredible collaboration. And I'm so grateful for Jing and her team just believing in us and supporting us. And they have the process down of how to collaborate with a brand so well that it just was a very smooth transition doing this. I think that, we hired someone in regulatory to really help us with, there are all these amazing nutrients in nuts, and each flavor has different exciting things to call out of what we're a good source in or an excellent source in. So we are tweaking our backs to really call out some of these, and they're going to start rolling out in June and July. So the packaging is going to be brighter, bolder, but also just call out a lot more of these benefits that we weren't doing beforehand. And I'm really excited about this.
I take it that a good source is different than an excellent source from the way that you said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fun regulatory things to learn.
Yeah. It just, as we continue to grow as a phase, I'm like, we gotta do it right. Make sure that it's labeled 100% correctly.
Well, we will be continuing to follow as fans and customers, continuing to follow Daily Crunch. And we really appreciate your time and coming on and talking with us today. Really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so great. And I hope for all of you listening that you were able to benefit from some of sharing my experiences. Thank you.
I have no doubt they will. So